A boy named Steve has always dreamed of being a miner. But whenever he tries to help, an old man chases him away. Decades later, Steve is a depressed adult who sells door handles. One day, Steve's lunch reminds him of his love for mining. He returns to his childhood town and confronts the old man, dodging his attack to finally enter the mines. Steve happily mines for hours and eventually finds two mysterious glowing artifacts. When he puts them together, they open a portal to another dimension called the Overworld. Steve immediately falls in love with the Overworld, where night falls every 20 minutes. Everything is shaped like a block and can be used to craft whatever his mind could come up with, including a house made of wool. The world is beautiful during the day, but at night Steve must stay inside the house to avoid the zombies. One morning, he finds an aggressive wolf. By feeding him a bone, the wolf becomes friendly and Steve adopts him as a pet, calling him Dennis. Years pass with Steve and Dennis traveling the land and building all kinds of amazing structures. Eventually they come across some mysterious ruins and a chest with a missing block. Steve uses the block to repair the ruins, creating a new portal. Dennis and Steve immediately cross it and find themselves in the Nether. There's no joy or creativity here, just piglins mindlessly looking for gold. Their leader is Malgazha, an evil sorceress who looks for the Orb of Dominance. Steve's glowing artifact is that orb, so she steals it from him and starts making plans to take control of the Overworld. Steve and Dennis are locked up in a cell, but Dennis takes the keys from a guard to escape. Then they retrieve the orb and Steve makes Dennis take it to his house in the real world. While some piglins recapture Steve, others try to chase Dennis. However, these piglins can't be in the Overworld because it turns them into zombies and they're forced to retreat. Before jumping into the portal, Dennis accidentally loses his collar. In the real world, he hides the orb under Steve's bed. The orb splits when it falls, which closes the portal. Now Dennis is stuck here. Many years later, Garrett has a retro store in a small town in Idaho. He used to be an arcade champion in the 80s and has never let go of his glory days. Now his shop isn't doing so well and he ends up receiving an eviction notice. Desperate to make some cash, Garrett goes to a storage auction, hoping to find a lot with something valuable he can resell. He learns that one of the lots has a rare Atari Cosmos, so he buys it for $900 with a check that can't be cashed now. However, when he finally opens the Atari box, he discovers that it's empty. He furiously starts destroying the storage unit, not noticing the orb pieces that fall from the box. To make matters worse, his car breaks down in the middle of the road when he tries to go home. Meanwhile, siblings Natalie and Henry are moving to the same town because it was their mother's dying wish. As they drive down the road, they see Garrett raging at his car. When they arrive in town, real estate agent Dawn gives them the house keys and a gift from the potato chip factory Natalie will be working at. Dawn carries animals in her car because her dream is to open a petting zoo. The next day, Natalie makes their mother's signature pizza for Henry to take to school, hoping that it'll help him make friends. On his way to school, Henry sees Garrett's retro store and goes in to admire all the cool things. Garrett uses the chance to promote his mentorship program, so when Henry asks for life advice, Garrett demands payment and ends up taking the pizza instead of cash. Garrett says many inspirational words that don't make much sense, but at least he reminds Henry that teamwork is important. At school, Henry's first class is art and the teacher makes the kids draw a banana and an orange. Instead of making the usual still life drawing, Henry draws a banana with a jetpack. The teacher scolds him for not following the assignment and his classmates mock his ideas. To prove them wrong, Henry goes to the school lab and builds a jetpack, which he straps to a skeleton. He then does a test run in front of the crowd. The jetpack launches well, but it fails in the middle of the flight and crashes in the potato chip factory where Natalie works. The big potato statue on the roof is hit and falls into the river. The vice principal says this could potentially mean expulsion and demands to see Henry's guardian. Instead of calling Natalie, Henry calls Garrett and offers to pay him $26 if he pretends to be his uncle. Garrett picks Henry up and the vice principal is excited to flirt with a pseudo-celebrity that she lets the boy leave. At the store, Henry is tired of all his ideas failing and throws his notebook away. Then he notices the mysterious artifacts and wonders what they do. Garrett reads the paper that came with them, which says they should never be combined. Henry does so anyway and the orb starts glowing while Garrett reads the other side of the paper, which warns them that it's extremely dangerous to look for the orb's treasure. Minutes later, Natalie is freaking out because she can't find Henry anywhere and he won't answer his phone. Dawn tells her that he was behind the factory incident and teaches her how to track Henry's phone, revealing he's at the local mines. Meanwhile, Garrett and Henry enter the mine, unaware that Dennis is watching them from afar. They find the glowing portal right before Natalie and Dawn catch up to them. The orb then connects to the portal with a beam of energy and starts dragging Henry. The others try to pull him back, but the energy is too strong and throws Henry through the portal. Soon the rest of the group is dragged to the Overworld too and they're amazed by the beautiful view. Garrett notices a pink sheep and tries to talk to it, so the others follow him. In the Nether, Malgazha's magic detects the return of the orb and goes to see Steve, who has spent all these years in a cell. She wants him to bring her the orb so the piglins unchain him, and Steve uses the chance to steal a sword from them. Before he can attack, Malgazha pulls out Dennis' collar and pretends the wolf is her prisoner. If Steve doesn't bring the orb, she'll kill Dennis. Back to Garrett, he tries to communicate with the sheep to no avail. Suddenly night falls and a horde of skeletons riding spiders attacks with flaming arrows. The group immediately runs away and Garrett gets separated from the others when he falls into a hole. The skeletons chase after the other humans and try to shoot more arrows, but at that moment a spider jumps and the arrows hit it instead. As the flames spread through the woods, Henry accidentally bumps into a tree, causing part of the trunk to become a little block. After inspecting the little block, Henry punches the tree to get more and realizes he can use them as building materials. He immediately picks up more and starts piling them up to build a structure they can hide in, not realizing he left the orb outside. Meanwhile in the hole, Garrett has found an abandoned shovel and is desperately digging while the skeletons shoot arrows from above. He sees an open area at the end of the tunnel and runs ahead until he finds a second hole that takes him back to the surface. Suddenly he's startled by a creeper and Garrett punches it to defend himself. The creeper glows for a few seconds before exploding, which sends Garrett flying across the field. Then Garrett starts running as both the skeletons and the zombies go after him, but he stops to pick up the orb. Unfortunately an arrow hits the orb and breaks one of the pieces, causing the portal to disappear. Garrett picks up the remaining piece and runs to Henry's building, but there's no door. While he fights one of the zombies, another monster appears on the roof and the group has to push it off. Soon the zombies surround Garrett, so Henry opens a hole and brings Garrett inside before closing it. Unfortunately a creeper gets too close to the building and explodes, bringing down part of the wall. The group runs to the roof and stands in the corner as the horde comes closer. Suddenly one of the zombies is stabbed by an axe and thrown off the building by Steve, who is here to save the day. Using his axe and quick fighting moves, he fights the horde and easily kills most of them in minutes. The remaining enemies are burnt down when the sun finally comes out. Afterward Steve explains they can't go home unless they have both parts of the orb. The only way to get a new one is to go to Woodland Mansion, which is a very dangerous trip. Steve offers to help them get home if they pay him with the orb, and the group takes the deal. In the Nether, Malgasa suspects that Steve has betrayed her, so she orders General Chungus to go after the heroes. She also gives him a special potion that will allow him to walk under the sun safely. Back in the overworld, Steve takes the group to Midport Village so they can get gear. He reveals he built most of this place himself and introduces them to the Iron Giant, who protects the whole place. Steve also shows them how to cook chicken with lava, and Garrett shows off by biting a very hot piece. Natalie tells Steve they should hurry up, but Steve thinks they must give Henry time to explore his creativity. A frustrated Natalie protests, pointing out that this isn't useful in the real world and only makes Henry a loser at school. Henry overhears this and gets upset, so he runs to hide in the nearest store. Steve shows Henry and Garrett all the cool stuff they can get here, like weapons and armor. Garrett finds a pearl that can teleport them anywhere and accidentally uses it, making him appear at the door. Next Steve teaches them how to use the crafting table. They have to put the materials in certain patterns to create what they want. Garrett makes a heavier version of nunchucks and Henry makes a tot launcher. In private Garrett asks Steve about the treasure mentioned on the note. Steve explains there are lots of mines in the area, but going there would imply a risky detour. Garrett tells him to take him anyway or he won't get the orb. At that moment Chungus and his soldiers arrive by flying on creatures called gods. They start destroying everything on their path and shooting villagers, who become chickens when they're hit. Steve gets ready to fight Chungus, but Garrett wants to be a hero, so he shows off his weapon only to knock Steve out in the process. Chungus then starts beating Garrett up while Henry brings piglins down with his tot launcher. Dawn and Natalie hide behind a table and kick it to bring a few piglins down too. They grab some farming tools and join the fight, showing impressive skill to defeat their enemies. Garrett is still being beaten up quite easily and Chungus almost captures him, but the Iron Golem appears to send Chungus flying with just one punch. The ghasts open fire and now the village is burning. Steve drags Henry and Garrett to safety and Natalie wants to go after them, but the flames are in the way. Dawn tells her they can reunite later at the mansion. The trio makes it to the top of a high building and Steve gives his friends his last two wingsuits, telling them to fly to the mountains across the sea. Garrett pushes Henry and he falls for several miles, but at the last second he manages to activate the wingsuit and starts flying away. Soon Garrett is following him, and Steve joins them by jumping on Garrett to ride him like a horse. The piglins and the ghasts start chasing them while shooting fireballs, which destroy parts of the mountains. One of the piglins jumps on Henry and almost makes him crash, but he manages to control his flying to move ahead. Steve controls Garrett by using his hair and pulls a quick move to make one of the ghasts crash. A group of hog-riding piglins throws their spears at them and two even jump on the men, so Garrett has to grab Steve to prevent him from falling. The ghast is still shooting fire and makes a hole in the rock formation blocking the way, where piglins are waiting with a net. Since the hole isn't very big, Garrett and Steve hug tightly and manage to go through it right before the piglins throw a bucket of lava at them. The attacking ghast ends up tangled in the net instead. Henry uses a firework to push the piglin off and sends it into the last ghast's mouth, causing it to explode. It also makes Henry lose control and he crashes into his friends, which makes them start falling. Luckily Steve has a water bucket that he throws on the ground, creating a lake for them to land safely on. While the boys travel through the woods, Steve tells them Malgasa's story. She used to dream of becoming a dancer, but the piglins didn't appreciate her talent and her father was ashamed of her. This made Malgasa denounce creativity, and now she wants the orb to black out the sun to destroy the overworld. Steve promises he won't give the orb to Malgasa, but he needs it for leverage to save Dennis. In the Nether, Malgasa yells at Chungus for his failure and unleashes the Great Hog, who easily kills Chungus with just one move. Then Malgasa sends him out to get the orb. In the village, Dawn and Natalie try to get on the last boat, but the villager just rows away. Natalie mines a piece of wood to throw at him, only to miss. Now they'll have to find another route. Night falls when they reach the woods, and they discuss how awful it is to have adult responsibilities while fighting zombies with their farm tools. Suddenly a growling wolf appears behind them, so Dawn befriends him by giving him a bone. This makes a collar with his name magically appear around his neck, confirming this is Dennis. Dawn recognizes the name from Steve's stories and asks Dennis to take them to him. Meanwhile, Steve takes the boys on a detour through the redstone mines, where Garrett accidentally steps on a trap and the walls start throwing projectiles at him. Garrett tries to run, but a cube hits him and sends him flying. His head lands on a lever that opens a hidden door, revealing a huge pile of diamonds. When Garrett starts filling his pockets, Henry gets angry because he realizes he planned this. At that moment, Steve smells something horrible and they hear the Great Hog appearing nearby. The trio rushes to get on a minecart and rides through the mines very fast, but eventually the redstone powering it runs out and leaves them stuck in a dark room. Steve lights a torch and they find themselves surrounded by creepers. The Great Hog is getting closer, so Garrett starts pushing the cart toward the redstone trail while Henry hits the creepers. The cart hits the trail just in time to leave the mines while the Great Hog is brought down by the exploding creepers. Once the trio reaches the woods, Henry calls Garrett out for his selfishness. Garrett finally drops the macho attitude and admits he's scared because he's a loser. Henry takes pity on him and they reconcile, so Garrett lets him have the orb. Eventually they make it to the mansion and Steve shows his friends a map of the 3 floors. There are dangerous enemies guarding every area, so they need a plan. Garrett and Steve distract the Vindicators on the 1st floor by playing some silly music, allowing Henry to sneak around. At first he manages to avoid a few guards, but when he reaches the stairs the Vindicators see him and start chasing him. They throw their weapons at him and Henry avoids them by hiding in a room. Meanwhile, Garrett and Steve are captured and put in a ring. Steve is tied up and Garrett must fight their greatest warrior, who is a tiny zombie riding a chicken. They're small but very strong, so they use their teamwork to hit Garrett over and over again. Garrett manages to pull a move to hit the zombie back and the kid starts crying, but he's just acting to attack Garrett by surprise. When Garrett is down, Steve manages to remove his ropes and jumps to headbutt the zombie, throwing him off the ring. Back to Henry, he starts searching the chests in the room and uses some materials to build a diamond axe. After searching for a while, he also finds the replacement artifact for the orb. At that moment the Enderman appears and uses its power to hypnotize Henry, making him see a vision of all his friends insulting him. When the fake Garrett burns his notebook, Henry snaps out of it and attacks the Enderman with his axe. The creature keeps teleporting away, but Henry never gives up and hits it until it finally dies, leaving a pearl as a reward. Then Henry mines a hole in the floor and jumps to reach the ring. The 3 friends run out of the mansion together, only to be surrounded by Malgasa and her army on ghasts. She uses her magic to get the orb from Henry's bag and flies away while the piglins jump on the bridge with dynamite. Garrett throws Henry at one of the ghasts, causing the piglins to fall off. Then Steve puts down a slime cube and bounces on it to join Henry, but before Garrett can do the same he's blocked by another ghast. He tells Steve and Henry to leave without him and starts fighting the enemies, who soon blow up the bridge. The explosion damages all the ghasts and the boys end up crashing on the ground. Sometime later Steve wakes up and is excited to find Dennis licking his face. It turns out that he and Henry were rescued by Dawn and Natalie, who are keeping them safe in a mushroom hut. Natalie apologizes to Henry for what she said and they reconcile. Meanwhile, Malgasa puts the orb on top of the Nether portal, which shoots a laser beam that covers the sun. Now all the enemies roam freely and the piglins can come to the overworld. In the village, the group sees the darkness and prepares to fight by crafting all of Henry's best ideas. Natalie makes a diamond sword while Dawn brings down some skeletons with a big explosion and befriends more wolves. When the piglins unleash their attack, Henry activates a bunch of iron golems, whose strength easily overpowers the piglins. The golem leader has been enhanced with special boots that allow it to move fast, bringing down several enemies at the same time. Henry and Natalie also join the fight, so Malgasa decides to send out a new Great Hog. While the golem leader fights the Great Hog, Steve puts on his diamond armor and goes after Malgasa. Unfortunately, he misses his big attack and she destroys his armor with her magic. He then throws some eggs, which hatch into chickens that bite her. The golem leader is defeated by the Great Hog, so the kids need to hurry. Henry shoots the pearl to the top of the portal and it instantly teleports him to that spot. When the Great Hog is about to kill Natalie, Dawn arrives with Dennis and a whole pack of wolves, who jump on the hog to keep him back. Sadly, the hog is stronger and pushes them off before shooting a beam at the portal, causing Henry to fall before he can reach the orb. At that moment, Garrett shows up in a ghast and rescues Henry at the last second. Henry then uses a spear to poke the ghast, making it shoot fireballs at the portal. The structure starts crumbling and the orb stops working, so the sun comes out again. The light makes the monsters burn and the piglins become zombies. The big hog picks up the orb, only to be suddenly defeated by the golem leader with an amazing attack. The orb falls again and this time Natalie catches it. Malgasha has no power left and Steve easily brings her down, but he decides to abandon her instead of killing her so she can learn to survive on creativity. Afterward the group gets ready to go home. Steve tells Dennis to leave with Dawn and sings him a goodbye song. The group disappears into the portal and after some hesitation, Steve decides to follow them, finally ready to live in the real world again. Sometime later, Garrett's shop is shining. The group has created their own video game and Garrett and Steve often play music for the kids at the shop. Dawn and Dennis open a petting zoo while Natalie starts teaching self-defense classes. Henry finally builds a jetpack that works and impresses everyone at school.